the CEO make him accountable that you will do this, and you will be answerable for this. Why this sort of culture is not thriving or not being imbibed or not being accepted in the corporates?
Look, culture flows from the top. It does not rise against gravity. There is no reverse osmosis. The lowest people cannot change the culture of a company. It is always come from top, particularly if it's a family-owned business. It is from the guy who's holding the pen in his hand and writing the checks. Okay, culture will come from this. That's one part of the answer. You're right about accountability. You're right in all your other assumptions. I will just give, I'll just say a single point thing about joining corporate and so on. I think we in the army have a lot of good going for us, but we also need to educate ourselves on the realities of the corporate world. And when we present ourselves, we mustn't assume that just because we have served here and there, these guys are going to just take it. Because they look at us as, they say, आपने बहुत अच्छा काम किया, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, देश की सेवा की, अभी बताओ हमारे लिए क्या करोगे? That is the question we should be able to answer. Normally what we do is we say, मेरा CV पढ़ ले, मैं तो सब कुछ कर सकता हूँ. मैं HR भी किया है, एडमिन भी किया है, ऑपरेशन भी किया है, सिग्नल भी किया है, ये भी किया है. That is not, that is what, no HR guy in the world can translate that into action. That's my experience. So let's educate ourselves about the corporate sector, about their ways, about their profit motive. But all in all, I would say good army officers, when they step out and join the corporate, they do a great job. No doubt about it.
And we're going to invite a powerful panel for a quick discussion for about next 30 minutes. And then we'll open this house for further questions. Please don't leave just yet. We have saved the best for the last.
And I'm going to be asking questions. I won't be speaking, so don't worry.
So this panel will be moderated by Bali sir.
Yes.
Bali sir,
Thank you so much. Thank you.
May I request Bali sir to please take over?
Yeah, sure. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Stay put, everyone. Stay put.
May I first of all request Major General Ajit Gadre, VSM, to please come up. First of all, I'm sure it will warm your heart to know that he was born in Nagpur. Commissioned in 1972 in artillery. Then he chose to become a pilot in the army, went to army aviation. Loads and loads of experience. Flew 5,000 hours in all in 7 different types of aircraft. He's a second generation officer. His 3 siblings also have worn uniform, and now there's a 3rd generation in the army. He's commanded a battalion in a place called a regiment in a sugar sector, which is high altitude area. Later he served in Headquarters Eastern Command when there was Ulfa insurgency, and he was part of the team that was coordinating operations against them. And he's also been the commandant of the NCC OTA, COMT, something he shares with Brigadier Anand. And eventually he was the head of the aviation in the army. He was DG Aviation. Post-retirement, he was CEO of something called Helicopter Academy to train by simulation flying, which is a venture of CAE and HAL. Actually, he has a very long bio. And if I keep reading that bio to you today, the discussion will become only about General Gadre. So I'm going to stop here. But as all Faujis do, he insisted that I should talk about his wife. Mrs. Anjali is also a Nagpurian, and she has played for her college in the state right up to national levels in hockey in her days. Besides being a law professional, but I'm sure she will say that their main achievement is that they have a son and daughter and 2 grandchildren. May I now request my friend Chandrasutta Dogra to please come up. To those who have or will buy my book, will see that in acknowledgements I called her my cheerleader, because she encouraged me a lot during the writing of the book. We are from the same city. Her husband and I have served together as colleagues. She's a journalist and an author, and she's worked for 3 decades in loads of leading publications, including Outlook, the Indian Express, the Hindu, Hindustan Times, and she writes on a variety of subjects: politics, gender, political economy, socio-religious issues, and defense. And her last full-time job was associate editor in the Indian Express. She left this to write her second book, Missing in Action. This was the discussion just prior to this discussion in the other hall. It's an amazingly researched and a moving story of those soldiers who, after the war, were neither prisoners of war nor their bodies were found, were just simply missing. And we as a country, in some cases, are so apathetic that we didn't do much about it. So she has, moved a lot of needles by writing that book. I must also tell you that this particular book has become a military classic and is in several military libraries. Before that, she wrote a book that I read first time when I met her. It is called Manoj and Bubbly, A Hate Story. It's about honor killings. It's again a very chilling story of what went on in that particular state. Now she writes for several portals like First Post and The Wire, and of course takes part in a lot of discussion. She is the daughter, wife, and mother of defense officers. May I now request Brigadier Anand to please come up. Brigadier Anand told me this morning on the phone that he was my student when I was teaching in Staff College. So it's clear that he's come up the hard way in life. Okay. He's clearly a soldier scholar. When I requested him to give me his bio, his entire paragraph was about the books he reads, the type of reading he does, etc., etc. And I must say, he's a voracious reader, reading mostly non-fiction, military history, neighbors, strategic culture, geography, biology, genetics, anthropology, civilization development, leadership, psychology, human behavior, organizational structure, change management. And if that didn't take your breath away, I have got quantum physics and astronomy. Which he said, and I'm quoting him, he said, I've jumped, these are the recent rabbit holes in which I have jumped without much understanding. He was commissioned into infantry, moved in the Brigade of Guards, converted to a unit of mechanized infantry. I think we met in the valley,
Yes.
in Patahiri when I was commanding, and commanded an independent armored brigade in J&K, which is a great honor. And he has been an instructor in MTRAT Bhutan, Indian Military Training Team, and Staff College, which is really the apex of all teaching, and done several great courses. So, welcome, Brigadier Anand. Do we have General Palm here? Where are you, sir? I was getting worried. Please. Oh, I saw you. I saw you nodding, and I said, "Here's one good man who's liking what I'm saying." Okay. Major Baum is Sena Medal and Vishish Seva Medal. He is also an artillery officer who served taken part in all operations like Op Pavan in Sri Lanka, Op Vijay in Kargil, and he has had a wide exposure of all kinds of terrain. He is taught in the School of RT and has been head of faculty at something called the College of Defence Management, Secunderabad. He was GOC of a sub-area at Ambala. And of course, as I already told you, he's got a Sena Medal and a Vishish Seva Medal. He is an expert on the famous Bofors gun. No, not for the reasons that you heard about Bofors, as a technical guy, and an observer for the UN mission in Ethiopia and Eritrea. He was also the managing director of an extremely important scheme for us veterans, the Ex-Servicemen Contributory Health Scheme, ECHS. So he was the number one guy in Delhi running that scheme, and he's also been the commandant of Officer Training Academy, Kamptee. He's a defense analyst. He's taken part in a whole lot of subjects, and he's a motivational speaker. His wife is a dental surgeon, Dr. Mrs. Ila Baum, and his daughter is married to an army officer, and his son is currently in Bangalore working for MNC. So that's my, and thank you very much all for coming. I'm going to jump straight into this discussion, and please feel free to tell stories or whatever you want to say, but we will keep it crisp so that we can finish in those 30 minutes. The first question is, so what gives us army officers and soldiers unique insights into leadership and motivation? ये हमने कहाँ से ठेका ले लिया कि हमें इतनी नॉलेज हो गई लीडरशिप की और मोटिवेशन की? ये कहानी है क्या? तो ये सवाल आई विल रिक्वेस्ट फर्स्ट जनरल गदरे एंड देन जनरल अनिल to take on. General Gadri first.
Can you all hear me? Okay. Yeah. Thank you, VLF, for getting us over here for panel discussion on a subject which any army officer would like to speak on. It's about leadership and motivation, and where do we get this? Now, you all must be knowing that our army is a voluntary army. You join army because you want to join and work in the armed forces. So there is somebody is sending you an invitation or anything. So the motivation comes from there as the start point. Thereafter, when you pass out from the Indian Military Academy, there is a credo in the Indian Military Academy in the Chetwood Hall where your pipping ceremony is held. And it talks of three things. One is country, your men under your command, and yourself. What does it say? It says your country comes first, always and every time. That means your country's welfare, safety, and security comes first, always, and every time. Second is your men that you command, their welfare and security comes next. Your own safety and welfare comes last, always and every time. Now, what does it indicate to you? That when you pass out, get a 1 star. We got a 1 star now. These days they give 2 stars. What does it tell you? It already puts you on a pedestal of a leader. And wherever you get posted to a regiment or a battalion, infantry battalion, you are already considered a leader of men. So that's the most difficult part when you are put as a leader in a battalion. When you pass out and go to your Pulton, initially 3 to 6 months, depends from various unit to unit, there is a process of grooming a young officer who joins a unit. Now what does that process involve? That process involves getting to know your Pulton, getting to know your Pulton's history, getting to know what all awards the Pulton has won, honors and awards. How many Veer Chakras, how many Sena medals, what are their war stories, if you have participated in a major conflict, the entire history of all that. You also learn about the equipment that you're going to be using, your troops are going to be using, and which is your main weapon. Like I'm an artillery officer, it's my gun. So I was trained on a 25-pounder gun, and I landed up in a mountain regiment where we had smaller guns. So I know to learn about that. And that I learned from my havaldars. They teach me. So in those 3 to 4 months, it's divided into various sections. First, I learn about my gun from a havaldar who will teach me how to operate that gun, what are its limitations, how far can it fire, and how accurate it is. Then I go to my technical assistant teams who teach me about technical gunnery. And mind you, all this I have learned when I was undergoing my young officers course in our various schools. Like infantry officers go to infantry school, I went to school of artillery, and air defense officers go to air defense school. So you learned all this. But here, learning from a havaldar or a GSO, a Naib Subedar or a Subedar, there's a kind of a bond that starts getting created. You always term him as one of your ustads. He taught you this. These are the nitty-gritties of, before you go into actual firing. Thereafter, I am made to go through the radio equipment that is for communication, how to operate, what are its limitations, where all it can operate, and how do you carry that. So I learn it from another Havaldar or a JCO. Then I go to certain things of management of the Pulton, how to handle accounts, right? How to handle accounts, learn about accounts. So all this process, then I do a gun drill, doing with the normal detachments of the gunners who are handling the guns. Each gun requires 5 to 6 people to handle it. So a detachment of 5 to 6 people, 5 to 6 Jawans. So we have 6 guns in a battery, which is the smallest unit. And so you do that. So all these things happens. You know about the unit history, you know about the equipment, you know about what is your role. And then at the end of it, there is a sort of a test held. You are thereafter cleared to act as a gun position officer or in infantry as a platoon commander. He goes as a platoon commander in. He placed, so certain number of men are placed under you. Now, this is where you consider them as your troops. And when I became a gun position officer, I had 6 guns with about 30, 35 gunners. I had a couple of JCOs. I had a certain number of vehicles to take my guns and all that. So this formed a homogeneous team. This is the subunit I am talking of a battery. So all these men are under your command. Now imagine a young lieutenant made in charge of all these fellows. So what it teaches us the bond that I need to establish with my men. I must know, I must see that they all are comfortable. So I take on the welfare aspects of my Jawans and the other troops that I command. So all this puts me in that leadership spot where I start getting to know my men, getting to look after their welfare, as also professionally I am getting trained by the JCOs who are much older to me, but I have been placed above.
So on this point, if I may interrupt you, so you made a very significant point. There was a British writer who wrote, he said the Gurkha does not follow the officer because he is a Sahab. He follows the officer because he thinks he is his Sahab. You own, you have a relationship, and that is what the summary of what he has said very beautifully. He's told us his entire initial journey. Let me just change this question a little bit so that we can General Anil, I'm just going to change the question a little bit for you. Similar question, but you see, we obviously operate in difficult conditions, but yet the morale and motivation remains pretty high. How do you think we achieve this?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me?
It's not on.
Oh, it's off. Can you hear me now? General Bali is asked about 2 aspects, that is the morale and the motivation. These 2 aspects are extremely important to each one of us, including leadership. Morale is a state of mind as to how you conduct and where it can lead to you. Motivation is something, a different aspect which is core to our service and to any organization. We had a lecture before this on the corporate sector. This works in every field. Motivation is actually a dynamic force which drives you into an action or motion. It derives from the word called motive, which talks about needs and desires. If the needs and desires are there, you must have all heard about the Maslow's theory of hierarchical needs. All this manifests from there. When he talks about and asks me a question about the morale and the type of conditions which we work, I mean, India is blessed, a nation which has all types of terrain. The other nations in the world may boast of a type of terrain. We have the plains, we have the deserts, we have riverine, we have mountains, we have all high altitudes, we have jungles. And each one of us is fortunate that we have worked here. Can you imagine what is the motivation for a Jawan who's deployed as Siachen? Look at the paradox. Siachen as a word means bed of roses. Not a blade of grass grows there, but that's what the name is. If a Jawan is doing his duty and scanning the horizon at night, looking for the enemy movements, imagine at a height of 19,000 feet, pitch dark, temperatures ranging from 0 to minus 40. And incidentally, let me tell you, beyond minus 4 doesn't make a difference. Till minus 4, you realize that yes, temperatures are falling. The equipment is good, so not to worry. Why does he do the duty there? Does he do it because he's fond of his nation? Does he do it because he has a duty to perform? Does he do it for a few dollars more? I don't think any son of a gun will put his life to matter in front of a line of fire a few dollars more. Why does it do it? Like General Bali in the last part brought out, Naam Namak Nishan. His spirit decor, his unit Izzat, and his customs and tradition of his unit matter to him much more than any of the items which I illustrated. Motivation is what? What motivates him. And this is where leadership plays a major role as to we need to ensure our men under our command are always motivated and at the highest level. I'll just give you a small example on the aspect of motivation. There was a guy called Captain Jojo Sen Gupta. Unfortunately, he died on 31st of August 2013 out of cancer from Command Hospital in Pune. This young boy was a brilliant officer right from his school days. A Rimkolian, RIMC Dehradun, topped his UPSC exam, topped his WIO scores, gold medalist NDA, and the works he had. In the 65 operations, when he was, from the 16 cavalry, when he was scanning for the enemy tanks, a missile hit his binocular and his complete face was shattered. He was evacuated and recovered, but completely blind thereafter. His girlfriend Rita decided to marry him in spite of being blind. I mean, kudos to her. That is what our families are, what he was trying to mention in the last lecture. This man, after being voted out because he of no use to the armed forces when he is blind, was given a gas agency in Siliguri. This gentleman could recall telephone numbers. Those days, the mobiles were not available. Hundreds of them verbose. He was also got a agency from Tata Oil Company, which he got the best price. What I'm hinting at is, a blind man, look at the paradox. A blind man was a man with a vision. He started a school called Prerna there, which children who are underprivileged. He has 2 daughters and a son. The daughter also is married to a blind officer who became blind during the Kargil operations. Son works for UN mission and is doing well. Motivation can take you anywhere. Thank you.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Anil. I'm going to turn to you, the only serving soldier here. Rest of us, of course, telling stories about the past. Tell me, we have developed almost a subconscious culture of teamwork. We can't survive without teamwork, and Beck Infantry knows it better than I suppose anybody else. What are your thoughts? How do you think we have developed it? How has this teamwork come about?
Thank you. So teamwork for the armed forces is one of the most critical prerequisites for its survival. And in fact, it is, I would feel that teamwork is essential for every organization to succeed. And one of the essential differences between the armed forces and the corporate way of life is a difference in the degree of teamwork which exists. And this teamwork, the criticality of the teamwork is intrinsically understood by every person wearing the uniform. And I would dare to stick my neck out and say that it should be well understood and believed believed in by every person in the corporate also to succeed in the corporate philosophy, whichever it may be. And where does this teamwork come from? I think in the armed forces, first and foremost, the teamwork comes in the culture of a collective belief. A collective belief on a higher ideal which is larger than the individual. So, from the very beginning, as 12th, 11th, 12th pass officers who get into NDA or a little later in IMA, the first thing that comes to us or is taught to us in very different methods, some apparent to us and most of them not apparent to us at that time, is how to subsume our individual desires, liking, beliefs and sacrifice it without even feeling that sacrifice at the altar of collective good. And so the collective decision given by the government at that point, by the CEO at that time, or by any leader at that time is what guides us to achieve whatever we want. So first and foremost is the collective vision we have for the collective good of the organization as compared to the individual good. And this comes from various things like having trusted teams, by having a shared vision and things like that. And to build this, the organization does many things. It is part of the way we live. It celebrates collective victories more than individual accomplishments. While individual accomplishments are also very important, but when compared with each other, it is the collective which will always be celebrated in much more manner. And so we have things like the Bada Khana, we have things like, every collective victory, the individual comes down. And that is what the leaders are taught. The leaders are taught, first, you are there to take the blame. For the accomplishment of somebody, you push forward the lowest person who is there, who's contributed the most in the most innocuous but silent manner. You push him ahead and say that this was the person who achieved this thing. The leaders stand back. But if there is a faux pas, then the leaders are supposed to step in. These are organizational and cultural things which are imbibed into us. Of course, the issue of Naam Namak Nishan and the fact that there are many books, leaders eat last and all. They all epitomize a feeling that a leader is supposed, it's a responsibility. It's not a privilege. It's not a privilege to garner spaces. It's not a privilege to garner accolades. The ranks you wear, even if you are wearing it incorrectly, as what Wali sir said, are a privilege which are bestowed to you to deliver onto a responsibility which has been given to you. And you work hard to stand up to that responsibility so that the people you command, their eyes are filled with respect for you. We create these shared memories. We create shared stories. We write some of these stories. We talk to each other on those stories. And we celebrate each moment of our life for these collective experiences that we share. And thus, in the very heart of all of us, beneath all the uniform that is there is the blood that is flowing is of a common shared need, desire to always deliver on the most important thing, which is achieving the operational goal. Sometimes it is also known as working on a mission mode, and such like terms have been coined. But this is what is part of our culture. We may not speak about it often. Today I got an opportunity to speak about it, thanks to everyone. That is what drives us, and that is intrinsic in it. So individual successes will be celebrated, collective successes will be celebrated with so much more happiness by everybody, and that is what by a unit, which is the smallest unit, which 24-hour I saw very closely when sir was commanding. Units thrive and they succeed in everything that they do because they believe in the larger good of the organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Anand. Thank you. I'm going to turn to Chandrasutta, and the question I had in mind was to do with families, which you can address. What do you think is the role of the families in the army? How is it different? But I'm more interested in, when we were discussing this thing about Naam Namak Nishan and tradition, you mentioned a particular episode about a hoof. I would be very happy if you started with that.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Um, Naam Namak Nishan is something which we as army children have grown up hearing, and I couldn't really understand what it meant when I was growing up in the cantonments. But later on, when I got married to an artillery officer, and in our regiment, that is the 56 Field Regiment, we have one battery called the 4 Hazara Mountain Battery. It used to be a mountain battery earlier. This was there from the days of the East India Company. It was raised at that time in the Northwest Frontier Province. And it's one of the most highly decorated mountain batteries in the world today. And it is today part of 56 Field Regiment. There are about 3 to 4 batteries in one artillery regiment for those of you who are trying to figure out what is a battery. Battery is a component of, I think, 6 to 7 guns, 6 guns. So there are 3 to 4 batteries in every regiment, artillery regiment. So 4 Hazara battery has a tradition which we all value so much since it is part of our regiment today. When it was a mountain battery, in those days the artillery guns, it was called pack artillery also, because mules के ऊपर guns को dismantle करके उनके parts ऊपर पहाड़ पे पहुंचाए जाते थे in Afghanistan and Northwest Frontier Province and in those areas. So there were mules which were a part of every battery. Now there was this one mule called Granny. She was the carriage mule of the number one gun in Hazara battery. A very well-loved mule. She was extremely hardworking, tough and sturdy. So everyone in the battery, from officers down to the Jawans, really loved her. And mules used to be retired at the age of 15 years, and after that they were put out to pasture or executed or whatever. So everyone said, no, Granny, we cannot let her go, and we will pay for her upkeep. So everyone chipped in, and Granny continued to live in the battery till the age of 35 years. When finally she died, the British officers at that time, they took one hoof, they got it cured, and they mounted it in silver. Now, till today, that hoof mounted in silver is a part of 4 Hazara battery and also 56 Field Regiment, and it sits on the desk of the commanding officer. It is part of our regiment's legacy and something that we are also proud of. This is how traditions, values get passed down, and this is also something which every Jawan, every officer, even a child of the regiment is aware of. Children who have moved out into civilian environments to work in, कोई private sector में है, कोई बाहर गया है, but everyone knows about Granny's hoof and they value that legacy which has been passed down. And similarly, I think most battalions, regiments across have something or the other that they value as Naam Namak Nishan particularly.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm going to ask every panelist as a final bit to give, if there was one thing they want to offer from their lives in the army to everybody else, which people can follow and use and maybe find it meaningful, what would that be? And of course, like Karan Johar has that rapid fire round, for all of you, is going to be, you have to say it in 2 sentences or maybe 3 maximum. What is that one lesson that you want to? And while you're thinking of that, and I don't want to put you on a spot, let me tell you about this tradition business. So 2016, I went to Trivandrum to attend the raising day of my unit. I was already a retired man. There was a jazz band playing. Now I'm from Bihar regiment, and Biharis are not particularly good at playing jazz band, but we had raised one, and they were playing jazz band, and I walked up to the band, and I saw they had put very nicely embroidered pendants all around the stage. It said JORZ band. And I said, what the hell? So I called an officer and I said, you got 50 of these made with Jor's band, all wrong? He said, no, so it's not wrong. He said, when the band was being raised a couple of years ago, the Subedar Major was a guy called Marshall Mins, a hockey player, an Adibasi. Mins with a Z in the end. And Mins couldn't wrap his head around jazz band. He thought it's a British tradition, must be George band. So every evening he would give the report to CO and said, "Sir, आज जॉर्ज बैंड का प्रैक्टिस हुआ है." And the CO would say, "George band nahi hai bhaiya, jazz band." But he insisted on calling it George band. When the band was finally made, in his honor, in Fort Bihar, it was forever called JORZ band. Z because Michael Minn's name is there in it. A subsequent CO tried to change it, and he was, he was shouted down. "Ye nahi ho sakta. This is a tradition. It can't change." Okay, I'm going to now turn to four of them for the rapid fire, and in the end, I'm going to tell you a tiny story about Sam Bahadur because I was triggered by what Sachin did at the end of his session. A story which is not in the movie, and which will also give you a lesson. Yeah. So let's start with the senior most person, General Gadre. In 2 sentences, what do you want to offer to this wonderful crowd?
Well, a couple of lessons that I have learned while serving in the army. There are 3 things that you can practice and which will come handy to you in whichever profession you are. One is prepare yourself for whatever you are doing, whatever is the impending task. That means you got to be highly motivated, you got to be qualified, and be ready to accommodate anyone's needs to measure up to their expectations. That means lead them into a particular mission or a task. Second is be prepared for uncertain conditions. That means you must always have a plan A, plan B, plan C for any eventuality. And the third one is, in any organization that you ever lead, you'll always have a person who is a trouble creator. Always. I have come across plenty of them. Now, how to tackle him? Now, he has a lot of strengths. He's an intelligent fellow, but he always creates problems. He doesn't obey orders. Now, how do you handle him? Now, that's the most difficult task that a leader has to handle. Now, you identify his capabilities and give him the most difficult job. Give him a responsibility. Give him the most difficult job and tell him, "I trust you, man, and you can do anything." And you will not believe, he proves that he is capable and he becomes the best man thereafter. This is a personal experience I'm
Great.
doing.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you. Thank you for 3 pieces of advice. And let me stump Anand by saying, you go next.
I would recommend that build structures to meet the objectives of your organization. Your organization goals will not be the same as the army, but whenever they are similar to the army, learn from it. Otherwise, build structures which will endure your tenure in that place.
Very good. Excellent. Excellent. Anand?
The mandate given to me is 3 sentences. I'll stick to that. Though I was triggered with an anecdote about the mountain battery, if time permitting, I can share it later.
Sure.
But going by my seniors' diktat, I would say always ask what you can do for your nation. Never ever question the nation, because the nation will always do it for you. Look what you can do for the nation. The nation should come first, always and every time.
Excellent. Excellent. Chandusita, your turn.
Taking off from whatever you said earlier, I think every organization should take a leaf from the armed forces and include the families and the wives into their fabric, because what we can see is that the inclusion of families in every aspect of life of the army, apart from fighting battles, of course, is that it's like an additional resource pool. The families stand up and they do so much when the men are fighting wars. They hold up the rear. They look after the other families around them, cheer them up, and look after their welfare. Anyone is sick, etc. There is so much that is happening, and the army or the other the Air Force or the Navy, you will find that women are given so much, are so much a part of it, that when an officer is dined in, the wife and the officer both attend. When they are dined out on a transfer, both the husband and the wife have to attend the dining out and dining in sessions, which in the civilian world, the wife is completely invisible from the husband's working environment. So it doesn't make her feel connected to whatever organization he might be, whether it's a company or a government office or even a small business or anything else. Whereas in the army, the families, we all feel so part of the regiments or the brigades or wherever. So we'll always say Hamari regiment. Even the child will also say कि he won't say पापा की regiment so much, but he'll say हमारी regiment ने आज hockey match जीता है या ये हुआ है या वो हुआ है. There is so much loyalty, so much of bonding, so much of connection that it's absolutely unbeatable, and I think all organizations should take a leaf from there.
Wonderful. You know, great. Talking about Hamari regiment, when you go to a Gurkha battalion, sometimes the whole platoon is made of Gurungs. Everybody's a Gurung. So they are known by their number. So you say, Tum kaun hai? Bola, main 38 hu. The surprising part is, if you go to a Jawan's colony and children are playing, he says, Tu kiska beta hai? Main 38 ka beta hu, sir. Okay. Final story with a great lesson on what to do when you feel scared and uncertain and fearful, which is what you will all do. I have not met an army officer or soldier who's not scared. Everybody's scared. Okay. So Sam Manekshaw was a major. He was posted in Burma and he was commanding a Sikh company during Second World War. He had a Jawan called Sohan Singh who was 6 feet plus, and in Manekshaw's words, he was a badmash. So Manekshaw had recommended that he should not be promoted. Sohan was not promoted. That upset him. One day, when Manekshaw came to his tent, the Subedar of the company came and said, Sir, बहुत गदर हो गया. सोहन सिंह पूरी कंपनी को बता रहा है कि आज रात को पिस्टल लेके आपको वो मार देगा. तो Manekshaw said, call him. So this boy was called. He said, Sohan, सुना तो मेरे को मारने की प्लान बना रहा है? Here's my pistol. Take it. सोहन कहता है, नहीं नहीं सर, मैं तो मजाक कर रहा था सर, मैं आप तो भगवान हो, मैं कैसे हो सकता है? नहीं नहीं सर, वो तो सॉरी सर, ये तो मखौल था. So Sam gave him one dhap and said, go back. Evening when Sam came back after dinner, the Subedar was still pacing up and down there. He said, sir, बहुत गलती कर दी आपने. वो सबको बोल रहा है कि मैंने मेजर साहब को बुद्धू बना दिया, मारना तो आज ही है, प्लान तो आज ही की है, मैं तो ऐसे बोल के आ गया. So Sam said, okay, call him back. So Sohan Singh was called back and Sam said, here is my pistol, you will guard my tent tonight. And 5:30 tomorrow morning, you will give me a mug of hot tea, and then 6 o'clock, a mug of hot water for me to shave. Okay? Be here. And Sam went off. Nothing happened. Nobody got killed. And that boy, Sohan Singh, followed Sam in future battles like a lamb. People asked Sam Manekshaw, weren't you scared? He said, scared? I was scared shit. I didn't sleep a wink the whole night. I was lying in my bed, trembling and thinking, oh, khadka hua, abhi aa gaya ye. Ab teri time aa gaya marne ka. He said, but I'm a leader. I can feel fear. I can't show fear. I mustn't show fear. That is a lesson. And that is what the army people are taught. When you start not showing fear, you know, two things happen. One is your head sends the right messages to your body. You start feeling brave. I'm not a brave guy at all, let me tell you. I'm a very ordinary guy. But I remember in 24 RR, there was firefight going on, and there was a Jawan sticking his head behind his boulder. I went to him and dragged him and said, Marna tune? Kehta, aap to khade ho. You forget. It's not that you're brave. One. Two, when you act brave, artificially even, it calms everybody down around you. You've seen bosses in the company? One stupid thing happens in Excel sheet, they start throwing files. They throw everybody under the bus. Okay, stay calm. Like Shah Rukh Khan said, "Main hu na," and nothing will happen. I want to thank the panel, particularly General Gadre and everybody else for being so wonderful and giving all the wonderful answers. And above all, I want to thank all of you for sitting so patiently, laughing at all the right jokes, smiling at all the right things on the last session of the day on this very successful VLF. And finally, thank you, Sachin.
You please stay there. I request Major Neeraj Bali to join the desk. Friends, now we are open for Q&A session. If you have any of us in the audience around have some questions, you can ask. Yes, you can start from you.
Today's world, where the things are very transactional, in the organization, most of the time, even the workers are willing to be a gig worker rather than trying to become part of the organization. How do you meet such people or how do you inspire them?
Look, there is no easy silver bullet answer to this question because the whole world outside is transactional. Okay? My suggestion to you is you as a leader stop being transactional. Okay? This will mirror some change. You stop thinking that I just have to be जब मेरा काम पड़ रहा है तो काम है नहीं तो कुछ नहीं है. Be relational, like in the army. What is relational? Relational is when you do things from an emotional place because you like your team. They are like your family. You want to do things for them. It's like what you do for your family. Not because it is written in the book. You don't do things for your children because it's written in a book. You will do anything to save them. Same thing. Be relational and gradually you will see the change in the team. But don't set out to change the world, it won't happen.
Yes.
Agniveer, if anything happens to my pension after this answer, this entire crowd will collect money and give it to me. I'm retired, I can answer this. See, first of all, the real reason why Agniveer is there is because the pension bills are ballooning. Okay? Which is a very legitimate reason for any government. After all, you need the money. Having said that, I wish we should have tried it as a small experiment in a battalion. You know, a small petri dish experiment to see how it works out. Trying it for the whole organization is fraught with danger. We don't know how culturally it is going to impact. Forget what is going to happen to the army. The army has very robust leadership. People will take care of these Josos. Imagine what will happen to the society when you have these fit-looking guys who have trained on AK-47, loafing the streets of Bihar and UP, and have no jobs. Think of that. Okay? Within the army, I'm sure people will take care of this situation. But we have it now. We have to live with it. We have to do the best we can.
So I'll take that answer. Yeah, please. Because I'm currently involved in training of UVs. So all as what General Bali said, the army is a very strong organization. It has inbuilt resiliences which are far too strong for any. So this change is a major change. All points which General Bali said. There are thousand ways to skin a cat. This is one of the ways. But having said that, we've been training them for a year now. We're currently training 780 of them. The kind of changes, any change which happens in the larger sense brings about lots of second, third, fourth, and infinite order changes alongside it. And that has helped the army a lot. A lot of processes which were put into place and were well established and were being followed unquestionably. We have had an opportunity to question them because the parameters of the environment changed. And so we started doing things a little differently. How it will pan out, we are not sure. I mean, nobody can be sure. What I am at this point in time, I mean, so my answer is limited to this point in time, this scope and this areas which are not in my blind spot. We are handling it very well. The Agniveer scheme, as far as the training portion of which we are involved in, is happening quite well. They are producing standards similar and a little higher, just a shade higher maybe than what was being produced earlier because of the sense of competition that has come. But what it will happen, I mean, so this answer is not in, is in continuation with what Sir said. What happens 4 years down the line? That outside we are not sure of, but it's outside our vision, it's part of our peripheral vision now. But having said that, because our chief is from Nagpur and we've had few interactions and other such people, he's coming shortly here again. There are a lot of things being put at various levels in the army, and have, if it had matured a bit more, maybe it would have been slightly better. But so far, it is quite good, and there's a lot of great hope of how they will deliver.
Right. Very, very happy to hear the positive parts of it. And I think you should take that as a more definitive answer than what I gave, because I'm a layman, I read newspapers. But this is very good. I'm very happy to hear that these are positive changes.
Right. Any more questions? Yes, sir. No?
Sir, one question I would like to ask you, since most of the army officers, because our retirement age is slightly early as compared to what the civilians or the civil government has got. We generally get the opportunity to work with corporates. And most of us, and a lot of you, barring Brigadier Anand, have worked with at some level or other with the corporates. What particular thing that you feel what we have the base in army is accountability, that every officer for any action the CEO make him accountable, that you will do this and you will be answerable for this. Why this sort of culture is not thriving or not being imbibed or not being accepted in the corporates?
Look, culture flows from the top. It does not rise against gravity. There is no reverse osmosis. The lowest people cannot change the culture of a company. It is always come from top, particularly if it's a family-owned business. It is from the guy who's holding the pen in his hand and writing the checks. Okay, culture will come from this. That's one part of the answer. You're right about accountability. You're right in all your other assumptions. I will just I'll just say a single point thing about joining corporate and so on. I think we in the army have a lot of good going for us, but we also need to educate ourselves on the realities of the corporate world. And when we present ourselves, we mustn't assume that just because we have served here and there, these guys are going to just take it. Because they look at us as, they say, आपने बहुत अच्छा काम किया, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, देश की सेवा की, अभी बताओ हमारे लिए क्या करोगे? That is the question we should be able to answer. Normally what we do is we say, मेरा CV पढ़ ले, मैं तो सब कुछ कर सकता हूँ. मैं HR भी किया है, एडमिन भी किया है, ऑपरेशन भी किया है, सिग्नल भी किया है, ये भी किया है. That is what no HR guy in the world can translate that into action. That's my experience. So let's educate ourselves about the corporate sector, about their ways, about their profit motive. But all in all, I would say good army officers, when they step out and join the corporate, they do a great job. There is no doubt about that. Thank you.
Right. So with this, we conclude the panel discussion. I invite Tasneem to take forward.
Thank you, Major General Bali sir, for your fantastic interaction about your book first. Thank you for talking about your book. Thank you, Major General Bali sir, for this amazing, crisp, witty, and very fantastic moderation which kept a house full, absolutely enthralled. Thank you to the panel for your insights. Thank you, audience, for your questions. I now request our VLF Blood and Soul, Mr. Sachin Jagirdar, to present tokens of appreciation to the panel and to Major General Bali too. The tokens of appreciation are specially customized by VLF for our speakers and authors. I now request Mr. Sachin Jagirdar to also gift a token of our love to the moderator of the book, The Winning Culture, which he moderated before this with Major General Bali. Thank you, Mr. Bridge Sarda, for removing time for VLF and providing your contribution. VLF is deeply obliged to all this entire panel for giving their time. Look out for the run-up sessions which begin from March 2024. March, we begin our run-up sessions which will lead to, again, the final bonanza, the crux, which will happen in first 2 months of 2025. So from March 2024, keep looking out for this space of and attend the run-up sessions of VLF, which are equally successful and curated and perfectly managed by a team. Thank you, dear readers. Keep buying, keep reading, and participate in the Mahametro VLF Mahametro competition, which is an ongoing competition. It will continue for the entire year. All you have to do is read a book while you ride Metro, click a selfie, tag VLF. There are 2 big ticket prizes. The first is rupees 10,000 and second 5,000 worth of books, which you can win by participating in this contest. Thank you for your participation, dear readers. See you.